I have such an honor to have my girlfriend to be in our studio today. Jillian gonna tell us all about dating. As all you guys know, dating sucks. Maybe I shouldn't say that because the more I say that, the more it's gonna get suck, right? Okay, let me take it back. Dating is just so, what's a good word for it? Complicated?
Yeah, I think complicated is good. I like to say interesting. It's kind of a non-committal word, but it allows for some curiosity, right?
I thought it was interesting. And it was funny because when you come up with Clara, I actually, I see from the beginning till now. Because I remember me and you would get sushi, and both two single girl, and then we were talking about what we wanted to do, how we can get better about dating, how's our life, and we're both in the family business also. So just give the audience a little bit of background. You're in family business, third generation, and it's an auto car. I remember during COVID, I need to get a new car. I was like, there was no car. I was like, I better call my girlfriend. I was like, can you find me a car? Anyway, so from that, and then you decided to start this app, Clara. And then it's not a dating app. It's for helping people on dating. And then the reason you start with that, because I think it was because based on being single, go on date, our personal struggle. And that's why you said, you know what, I'm going to come up with something to help myself, and hopefully it will help other women, right? Or not just women, everybody who is into seeing right now. And then I think another thing, I think the important about Clara, I think, is we don't have that much social connection. And I know that's part of the reason why you step into this. You want to be a social impact entrepreneur, and part of the thing you wanted to do is build that social connection with people. And then I think a lot of people are feeling lonely. I think there was a research how a lot of people actually feel lonely.
We're in a loneliness epidemic right now, and social isolation, and we're really getting hurt with it, especially after COVID. I mean, in reality, after this period of time occurred, everyone was, isolating because we had to. But now we're back out of it, and so many people are finding that those muscles, those social connection muscles that they used to use often, have kind of atrophied, and it's hard for people to get back out there. And you know what? I actually I compare it to working out quite often. Social connection.
Dating or social connection?
Social connection and dating / working. So for me, for working out, I never go more than 3 days without going to work out. That's a rule for me. So on day 4, if I'm not in the gym, that's a bad thing for me. I always have that only 3 days. Now with dating, I have the same rule for myself. If it's more than 3 weeks, then I need to go on a date. It needs to happen.
Why would you have to go on a date?
So that's the social connection kind of muscle, right? Because what happens is I feel a lot of my friends and users and just daters out there, it gets really easy for us to kind of pull back and get really safe in our, friendships, which are great, and in ourself and self-reflection, all this stuff. But the reality is, if your intention is to really have meaningful connections and sometimes romantic connections, and which is what the dating is, then you got to keep doing it. And I know for me, for practice, if I go for a 6-month hiatus on dating, right, or I take the whole holiday off, it's really tough to get back into it afterwards, right?
Yeah,
because you find it's harder because you're out of the practice. So that's one of the things that I think is just super important, is that we need to connect more. And going back to how I started and created the app, I was in family business and loving it and thriving. And I think I connected with you. I think, Evie, you and I became friends, right after. I got into YPO, and it was a couple years, right COVID, I think, when we met.
That's when we both joined YPO. So for audience doesn't know what YPO is, the Young President Organization.
Yes.
So we both are in that group, and then do that. First of all, there's not that many females. So when you find another female woman that in YPO, you treasure them. Oh my God, I found you. You're my tribe. So we started from that as just share our experience as a women in YPO, and also running family business, and you also were near in Pasadena. And I noticed Pasadena is just like not a single scene. So, right? It's mostly family. And being single, I feel like it was really difficult to find somebody in our town.
Yep.
So I remember me and you would be like, you want to grab sushi on nights? And then we can talk. And then we have our walks to get boba. It's pretty much is like, it's like go on a date. That's what we end up like talking about. All life is, right?
Yeah, no, and that was awesome. I remember that. I also remember getting coffee and how I really was writing. I think I had a note or something and kind of writing to show you what Clara was. Because the reality for me is I was in the business for my whole life. And then during COVID, I was in a relationship and I thought this person was the man I was going to marry. Yeah. And unfortunately, with COVID, fortunately, with COVID, I was home more. I was paying attention and what was going on. And I discovered during COVID that he had actually been cheating on me the whole time. And I remember telling you about that. And obviously, it was devastating. And I was just like in shock that it occurred to me because, you know, how did I not pick up on these things? Like, why was I not paying attention? And why was I not smart enough? Like, I was, like, completely blaming myself on it.
Yeah, I remember, and then I was keeping saying, oh, we're so busy, we at work, it's not like we have nothing else to do, or, you know, and then you have a big responsibility with the business. You are the president of your auto store, and you have multiple, not just one, right?
Yeah. Within the group, there's multiple, and it always kept me busy all the time, and I love that. Again, I was thriving. I mean, I love busyness.
Then I think your sister getting married, you were busy planning the wedding. You were just, every time they see you, there's always like, you're busy.
There's always a lot going on. Yeah. I think you and I are similar in that, is that we kind of fill up our calendar. We fill it up. We fill up our calendars, right? There's definitely holes, and we look at it, and we're like, oh man, it's a week, and then I start filling it up, and I'm sure you're similar. But yeah, so with that time that happened, and then I was like, man, this was like ground shifting for me. I need to do something about it. And the reality was, Evie, and I remember talking about this, is that I was still single. I didn't have kids, and I really wanted to. Like, I wanted to be in a committed, exclusive relationship. I wanted to get married. I still wanted kids. And after this whole experience, I was terrified that I would choose the wrong person again. Like, that was my biggest fear. Like, how am I going to date? How am I going to do this? How am I going to get back on the dating apps, start swiping, and then not get screwed over again? Like, really, that was my biggest fear. And that's where Clara started becoming, you know, a reality. Clara for Daters. It literally started, I started journaling first, right? I was going to a journal, having it in just paper, and trying to be really reflective and intentional after every time I had a date.
So what would you write? I mean, how would you, when you say journaling, whenever you go on a date, like, what will you write about? And by the way, I remember why you named Clara, because that's your grandma's name, right? Yes. It's so cute. I love it.
Yes, it's my great-grandmother's name. And then it's my mother's middle name. And claro is also in Spanish clear, clarity. So that's another kind of reason that I wanted to bring it in, because I feel like we make decisions, especially when it comes to romantic relations and connections, and especially early on, that are very unclear. There's a lot of hormones, there's a lot of stuff going on and sparks, and we're making decisions on who we're spending time with based on those feelings, which are valid, but they're not like the most, I guess, concrete things to be making decisions on, right?
Clara would be perfect for someone like me, because I'm like, well, I don't feel it. Forget it. Because I'm always like, dismissing things very quickly. And then I was like, okay, I don't feel that butterfly in my stomach. But then when you talk to other people who have long-lasting relationship, they're like, that's not the one that you're supposed to trust. Yep. That's actually, as a sign said, run away or something like that. Yep. So it's so confusing. Yes.
Yeah. No, we fall fast. And I was actually talking to another friend of mine yesterday, and she was talking about this person that she had been dating. She met quickly, and she fell fast. Like, her type, same goals, very attractive, all this stuff. Yeah. And then this was when she met him, it was like a month ago. And now I connected with her again yesterday, and she goes, I don't know, he's kind of boring. What? Like, he seems a little, not as exciting as I thought. I'm not sure if he wanted to travel as much as me. And I asked her, like, did you bring these things up to him? Like, maybe kind of consider that. And then also, going back to what she was looking for, I said, you know, I know you love traveling now, but you also said a huge goal was to like have kids. I said, do you see yourself traveling a lot when you have kids? And she's like, well, I guess not. So your world kind of does change too in the relationships that you're choosing.
Lady, I can tell you this. Your world definitely changed when you have kids. Yeah. Trust me on this one.
Exactly. So even though like travel is so important on your list, right? Because all these women are like, oh, travel is my number one. He has to love traveling. We have to go on big trips every year. The reality is, once you start having kids, which is something you want to do, it's a little tough to go on an international trip every year. Maybe it's somewhere local. Maybe it's like, I don't know, going to Cabo, and it's a resort trip as opposed to like, you know, fun traveling, you know, other trips.
Different kind of trip.
Exactly. Right? But that's the reality is the more we can kind of reflect on how we feel with it, because the other thing is she said he was boring, but she also feels really safe with him. She feels really respected with him. She feels that it's really obvious. She doesn't doubt his intentions or how much he likes her. So I said, those are all huge things. Maybe just pay attention to those a little bit. And then in terms of the boring thing, maybe say, hey, you know, I love what we did last week, but I would really like to do something exciting this week. Could you kind of, and just see, could you plan something and see if there's something out of the box that we can do, and see if he picks up the challenge. And if he picks up the challenge of you just laying it out there and say how much it would mean to you if you did all those things.
Girl, you should
Wouldn't
be
that
a
be
dating
a green
coach.
flag? I mean,
no, that was a really good point. I'm looking at you like, you should actually do a presentation on dating coaching session. Well, but that's still true. You're right.
Yeah, well, I talked to tons of dating coaches, and I love them. Dating coaches, dating therapists, dating strategists, they're all out there. And the reality is, I'm a dater. Like, I recognize all this stuff. I hear all these things, and that's where Clara kind of comes back to it, is you need to realize those things and ask yourself those questions, because a dating coach can tell you this right now, Evie. I can say all these things, but then you go meet some hot, you know, 6'5" guy in finance, whatever that TikTok trick guy is, right? You go do that guy, and then I ask you, but Evie, is it obvious that he's into you? And you're like, well, I don't know. I can't ask you those questions because you're gonna lie to me. You'll lie. You'll be like, oh, he's so into me. You're
gonna yell at me.
Yeah.
You're gonna be like, Evie, we need to have a talk.
Yeah.
We need to have a talk.
But that's where it's important for you to go log that experience in Clara, because what you'll see is the actual truth. You'll be truthful in that. The Clara will literally ask you, was it obvious that he's into you? Did you feel respected? Was he asking you questions about yourself? Now, you could lie. You could be like, yeah.
He asked me what kind of ice cream do I want when getting dessert.
Yeah, but the reality is, like, it's something for you to be aware of, and you're going to probably be more honest when you're logging this stuff for yourself in the app.
By yourself, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Oh, my God. So Clara is helping people, not a user. It's for people who are actually dater, who intentionally wanted to date, and then to help them, to guide them, at least clarity, right?
Yeah.
So it's not going to get confused by, God, I haven't been on a date for like months now. I'm so happy with one, or, you know?
Yeah.
Or, oh, I really need to go to my cousin's wedding. I don't have a date.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing. So daters versus users is a huge thing that we really need to pay attention to when we're talking about dating and modern dating, right? Because I feel like there's another TikTok trend that kind of goes along with this, and I don't remember exactly how it goes, but the girl's like, are you dating? Are you seeing anyone? No. Are you dating, or are you talking to anyone? No. Are you on the apps? Yes. And that's the difference. So there's being a user on dating apps, right? Where I can be a user on Hinge, on Bumble, on Match.
There's so many dating apps
So many dating apps. And the reality is most daters are on a couple of apps. Like for me, I'm on right now, I think I'm on Hinge, Bumble, and Match. So
did you think any of them are better than another, or?
Honestly, I think they're all pretty much the same. I do have data that supports that Hinge is better on getting you to a first date, and Bumble is better when you're looking at like second or third. So I have data that kind of supports that. But I think it all depends on the person. So as the dater and how they're using the apps. And I think that's the trouble with dating apps versus users. And that's where I want to really be clear. Clara for Daters is not a dating app. However, all dating app users should be using Clara, because Clara is going to help you organize who you're dating, what you're dating and the experiences, and it's going to help you just really pay attention and be mindful of who and what you're dating and what feels good in different connections. And it's a record, right? Mm-hmm. Like, you want to keep those things, understand what you learn from that experience, even if it doesn't work out. And the goal is, and this is, dating coaches say this all the time, but when you're trying to, like, when you're seeking new connections and new relationships, don't be so fixated on the outcome. Really try to pay attention to what's going on in the immediate. Oh.
Okay, let's repeat. I'm gonna have her to repeat the what, because that's really well. Hold on. I don't know what that is. Okay, so let's go back to
outcome.
So Clara is not a dating app.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, so Clara for Daters is not a dating app. However, I want to be very clear that all dating app users should be using Clara. So if you're using Hinge, Bumble, Match, you should also be using Clara. And it does,
it's like a supplement.
Completely,
right?
Yes, it's a resource. It's a tool to help you keep everything intentional and organized so you don't get caught up in the swipes of all these other dating apps, right? Because what happens is you're so focused on swiping and looking at the next person that you're not actually paying attention to the person that you actually went on a date with last night, right? Or the date that you have planned on Tuesday night.
Yeah.
And what Clara does is it grounds you back into the people that you're actually dating. So how I use it as a user, like, I'll go on the apps, I'll find some guys that I want to go on dates with, I'll message, I'll set up some dates, and then I'll kind of not spend as much time on the dating apps for a good 2 weeks because
I focus
on the guys that I have set up on dates, right?
That's really smart because I get distracted.
Yeah.
And I'm sure other people feel the same way as I do.
Yeah.
Especially, like, if you're busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You forget. I mean, you just get distracted.
No, for sure. But think about it. When you're sitting with someone and you're on, third or fourth date with someone, but maybe you're having dates with other guys too, and that's okay. Like, roster dating is a thing. It's also called rotational dating, where you're dating multiple people at the same time.
Is that a good idea or that's not a good idea?
So some people get really upset about this. I am a roster dater, and I do rotational dating. And what it means to me is I date multiple people at the same time. I'm honest, but that's what early stage dating is. It's not
because you're trying to figure out, like,
which one is going to be the one that works, right?
Yeah.
It's not, and I'm very honest. I mean, and guys are pretty honest with it too. Like, if you're on a first date with someone, it doesn't mean that you're exclusive, right? If you're on a second date, it doesn't mean you're exclusive. Third, fourth. For me, I guess the tricky part comes when there's physical intimacy.
Right.
I only have physical intimacy when I'm having committed exclusive relationships. So that just cuts out the noise for me to make it clear.
Yes.
But yeah, so when you're doing that and you're trying to be intentional with each one, and I would say, like, at max, you would probably, for me, it's going to be around 2 to 3 people that I'm, like, talking to and actually dating. Not when I say talking to, it's not just messaging on the apps. It's literally going on dates, or not just texting.
Okay.
See, going on dates.
This is the reason why I would not tell you, because you could definitely get mad at me. You're like, Evie, no. No. Okay, so texting is not dating.
It's not dating. That's not dating. What's dating?
Babe, that's what people do nowadays. Nobody freaking pick up the phone and set up a date. They just text.
So I would leave the texting to a minimum. You're texting, the only thing that you're doing to texting is to schedule the date. Location, time, place. The good mornings, the good nights, especially in the first couple of weeks that you're dating, you don't need to share all that information. Like, that doesn't need to occur. This is a stranger. This just is someone you're getting to know. That stuff builds. And honestly, I mean, again, going back to TikTok trends.
This is the reason why you said Clara is for dater, not for user.
Yes.
Because user, they would just keep texting.
Yeah.
But not actually get a
going
date.
On dates. You have to go on dates. That's the only information that's going to actually help you learn and gain wisdom in dating. The other stuff is just noise.
And it's wasting time. I hate texting back.
Yeah. And it's causing a false, like, emotional attachment to something that doesn't really exist. That delulu that people talk about.
Yeah.
Like, now you're, like, obsessing over someone that you don't even know yet, but you're thinking this is so exciting and whatever. It's not. At this point, you're still early. You're still getting to know them. Go on dates. You should be going on 1 date a week with that person, like over a long period of time. And if it gets more exciting and you want to see them more, go on 2 dates a week, see what happens. And then naturally, whatever that occurs, then that's going to be the person that you might want to get committed with or not. Again, for Clara for Daters, it's for everyone. So you can be in a polyamorous relationship or an ethically non-monogamous relationship and use the app. But the goal is to really just pay attention that you're actually having dates and that you feel good with how the date happened.
Being intentional.
Yes, being extremely intentional. And how it works after the date is there's 10 questions that happen after every date, right? And the questions are going to be around emotional safety, physical safety, relational safety, chemistry, and values. And I developed this with a psychologist. So after every date, you go in and it's going to ask you a set of 10 questions. And some of the questions on like a first date is going to be like, did you feel respected? Was it obvious that your date was into you? Was he nice to those around you? Were you comfortable with the conversation topics? And they're all yes, no, yes, no. And after the end of those 10 questions, you'll have a score. Now, that's only one piece of information. That's a very small piece. There's also a notes reflection where you can kind of write down how you felt it went, right? Hopefully, maybe if one of the questions you answered in a not good way, like maybe you were uncomfortable with the conversation topics, maybe expand on that, right? And say,
like, I feel this way.
Why did you feel this way? It's a reflection tool, and it's quick. It's not going to take long. And then you do what you want with that information. You choose to keep dating this person or you choose not to, but this is information that you have. Now, for me, what's really been interesting on how it's changed my behavior in dating is obviously, I think I showed you a picture, but obviously I have a type, right? Like, you know, tall, whatever, handsome. I think every girl has that type.
That's everybody's type.
I know, right? And it's just ridiculous because those things really don't matter at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But what I recognize is that I started dating out of my type purposefully. I was like, I need to start.
Really?
Yes, because I need to see what it's like, right? So I started dating a guy that was not my type. And I started logging the dates in Clara. And I recognized after all the dates, he always scored a 10. And it was like, oh my gosh, like, am I really not going to go on a second date with this guy, even though I felt so good afterwards? Like, I'll give it another shot. So I go on a second date. And then Clara, what it does is it keeps asking you questions, more advanced questions as you go. So first date questions are going to be different than second date questions. So then it starts asking you questions like, was there quality about your date that you found attractive? And I was like, yes. And then I noted in the notes, he had really nice eyes. And then I'm like, you know what? Okay, and he scored a 10 again. So then I go on a third date, and do you feel like important when you're around him? Yes, I do. And you know what? All
this
those
is
things
like a winner to me. Am I going to meet him?
But that's the thing. It starts building this feeling of attraction towards a person because you're like, so, you know, now he has nice eyes. I'm noticing his eyes. Now I'm noticing his smile. I'm noticing how happy he is when I'm around him. I know how happy I am when I'm around him. I'm noticing all these things. And that's where chemistry starts building, and it's that slow burn. A lot of dating coaches talk about that, especially for women. I think it's a little different for men, and I think that we should just be aware of it as men. But for men, I do think it does help because I know now the big conundrum with men is like supermodel or mother of my children trade-off, and that's the hard thing that men kind of have to figure out how to deal with themselves, and that's another way that Clara can really help. Because it helps you reflect on those things.
So men should use this too.
Oh yeah, no, we have male users. Yeah, for sure. Because it's about behavior change and who you're choosing to date. Like, do I really want the supermodel or do I want the mother of my children? And sometimes they're both. Like, don't get me wrong. I love supermodels and I'm sure they're wonderful mothers, but sometimes they're not. So that's kind of just something to be aware of.
And then I think a lot of it, they were also saying a lot of time we picked a partner to fix us. Yeah. Or the trauma that we have is when we were little, whatever that is, but it's different from everyone, right? So I think by keeping track of it, at least you can see, like, why I'm picking this person and why I'm keeping doing this. There must be a reason why, right? Yeah.
Well, and that's where the behavior change kind of happens. And I think the beautiful thing about Clara too is it does offer this opportunity to explore these ideas yourself. And it's not a therapist. It's a tool, but it can help you reflect so you can go and have that conversation with a therapist, or you can go and have that conversation with your mom or your best friend and say, you know what, I'm actually like I realized that I'm actually kind of fearful of men, and I have that I'm dealing with, and I'm working through it. Or I have this attachment style that's very anxious around guys, and I'm always scared that they're going to leave me. So I have this pick me feeling, and I never feel secure. And that's the thing with Clara too, is having this tool, it does pull you back into secure attachment. And I do think it's fluid. If you've ever read the book Attached, if you haven't, it's excellent.
It's about like your attachment styles. Yeah. I only know mine, so I'm avoidant. So
yeah. So this pulls you back into secure. I mean, you're going to be avoidant, but it does help you, at least in your relationship, realize, hey, I don't need to run. I feel safe. I feel confident. I feel important.
This is the reason why I'm all over the place.
Well, but that's the thing. Now you know it feels good.
Yeah.
So why am I running away from something that feels good, right? And that's kind of one of the pieces that this tool kind of brings back to you. But yeah, the big difference between all that is daters are actively dating and users are swiping and not necessarily going on dates. It's really important that people go on dates.
I think I'm a user, not a dater.
No! Oh my God, when was the last time you've been on a date?
I haven't been on a date for months.
See, it goes quick when you're not dating. Yeah.
Like, since my last relationship, so like, you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It's tough.
It just never, like, crossed my mind. It was like, okay, Evie, time for you to go on a date, you know, because it was just like, I don't see it as something important, but obviously it is, like, it's a social connection.
I mean, and that's the thing. And you might be in a stage where you're not looking for, you know, romantic social connection. And maybe your cup is being filled through your friendship social connection.
I have you.
Yeah, exactly.
Want to have dinner?
Exactly. So you don't need to necessarily have that right now, and that's okay. But for the people, and you have to be really honest with yourself, Evie, and I tell this to my users too, because I have users who really struggle with this first part, is do you honestly want a romantic connection right now? Like, is that important to you? And if that answer is that yes, and that's safe and feels good and everything, if that answer is yes, then you need to start dating. You need to go on actual dates. And if the answer is no, I'm comfortable and happy and feel fulfilled right now in this moment, then you don't need to date. Like, no one's forcing you to date. It's something that is there. But you have to be really honest with yourself, because, again, a big group of the population is suffering a loneliness and social isolation epidemic. And if you're one of those people, then maybe consider, is this something that I want, or is this just my circumstances, right? And that's
I think because of that, it's almost like, because you've been isolated for so long, then it almost became norm.
Yeah.
And then so like when you had to go back out there again,
yeah,
because now, you know, everything started opening up in the last year or so, then you kind of like, whoa, do you know what I mean? It's kind of like overwhelming for me a little bit. And then you're like, oh, now I have to be out there. Now I have dinner with friends, and
yeah. But it's so amazing that you say that, because you're just one of the, most social people that I know, and you're such a butterfly when it comes to all this stuff. Yeah,
we're friends.
Yeah,
but when you have to do it one-on-one, I think that's when I'm like.
So what's the Gatsby quote, you know, where he talks about, like, the vulnerability? I don't remember the quote, but it's something about when you're in a crowded room, right, you're feeling more comfortable than when you're one-on-one, like the vulnerability.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a tricky part. And honestly, I think, you know, people like you and I, especially people in business, we do feel that. It's a lot easier for us to stay on this level, this hype level of we're amazing, everything's good, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But then getting intimate with someone in an emotional way and having this new connection to someone you don't know and the possibility of a romantic connection, right?
It's
That's
scary.
a lot harder. Yeah.
It's scary.
And that's why a lot of relationships too actually start off as friendships, right? Because there's no outcome in mind of the interaction. So like going on like a coffee, you know, gathering with someone from work is a lot easier than going on a first date with someone that you met on an app.
But the problem me and you have is that we're like the boss, right?
Yeah.
Like you can't ask your like.
Yeah, it's really tricky to date at work. It's hard, but we do see a lot of relationships normally happening from those things. But that's where it goes into networking and like telling everyone you're single. Like, I think for me, and that's the other thing about exhaustion in dating apps, is like, if you're exhausted, then take a break from the apps, but you can't stop dating. You still have to keep going on dates. Instead, tell everyone you're single. Tell your grandmother, Grandma, set me up with someone. I need a date because it's been 3 weeks.
I need a date, everybody. I'm single. I'm sitting there.
I tell everyone. I'm like, if you, like, reach out, DM me. If you know anyone that think would like me, please, I would love to date. And those people who, and you have to know me.
See, but, but even saying that brought the point that obviously I can tell I'm wearing the Bumblebee dress.
Yes. It was a very big thing this week.
So, recently there was like a backlash against one of the famous dating apps.
Yep.
The Bumble.
Yep.
What's up with that, right? Here we are trying to date, trying to figure out about ourselves. And then the Bumble, what was the actual thing that they were saying? Pretty much you're saying that, like, shaming women being...
A vow of celibacy is not the answer, is the big billboard that they put up in LA. And shaming women. And it was just, I understood where they were coming from. They were trying to pick up on the frustration that daters feel, right?
Okay.
Women, daters, we feel that.
It doesn't sound right to me when I was reading that.
But it was wrong. They made fun of it. They ridiculed it. Even in a smaller way, honestly, I felt like, man, you're kind of shaming me. It's like almost like when you're eating too much and your grandmother says, like, do you really want to eat that? Like, that's how I felt like reading that. I was like, damn.
This feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, this doesn't feel good. Like, I don't like that you're calling me out here. And in a negative way, though. Like, correct. My grandmother, I love. Like, you're a business that I spend a lot of money with every month. Like, and you're charging me for compliments. Like, this doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel good for women, for sure. Because when I was driving down, I don't know where I was, and I saw that, and I was like, what?
Yeah, no.
And then I look at it again, it's just like, that doesn't make me feel good at all.
No, but I applaud them. They redirected. They took down the billboard.
So they did, okay.
They did, and they offered an apology, which was good. But, the real test is going to see what Bumble and other dating apps do to actually listen to daters. And I said this the last couple of days, is that dating apps and Bumble, all of them, they're so scared of losing their users. They're losing their users. They're losing Gen Z. People are just frustrated. So they're going. They're losing women. Women are choosing celibacy over it. I mean, they're losing users. But the reality is, they're so focused on fixing that problem that they stopped focusing on fixing the problem they were originally set out to solve, which is supporting their daters. Like, why are their daters frustrated? Yeah. Let's look at that, right? And that's what blows my mind, is because I've been looking to collaborate with dating apps, honestly, since the start of Clara. And I'm getting close. I'm trying to really just start just a couple of tests.
Yeah, because it would be great, because I think that was like a tool for dating app.
Yeah, no, I mean...
Which none of the dating app have tool like this,
exactly.
By the way.
And the reality is, users are on multiple dating apps. Like I told you, I'm using Bumble, I'm using Hinge, I'm using a bunch of them.
Man, go find her.
Right, yeah, no, I'm on them. But the reality is, all these people, we need to use it.
Yeah.
So if we can actually integrate and collaborate with dating apps, like, that would be a huge thing, because dating apps are a digital introduction tool. And for me, I feel that why daters are so frustrated and they're leaving the apps is because they're having difficulty converting these digital introductions and these digital interactions that are occurring on the app into actual dates. Because the reality is, even me, like, I'll talk to, like, I don't know. I wish I had the numbers. I know the dating apps have the numbers, but it's like ridiculous. It's like you talk to 50 people out of the 50, or you match with 50 people. Out of the 50 people, maybe 30 people like message you back. Out of the 30 people who message you back, maybe 10 actually get to like final stages and before a conversation. Out of the 10, maybe 2 get to a phone call. Out of the phone calls, maybe 1 gets to a planning the date. And that's like over a huge period of time. So the amount of time that we're spending on these apps is just, it's in a big problem, because we're spending so much time here and we're not actually spending time on the dates. So that's where the frustration comes from. Frustration comes from, I just messaged 50 people and only 30 came back. Like,
and
what
it's
the
also
heck?
exhausting, because you just texting.
Yeah. No, it's exhausting. And that's where I want to collaborate with dating apps like Bumble, because for me, Bumble, I know my Clara users use Bumble and they have a 31% failure rate every time that they're matching with someone. Like, they don't actually go on dates. And that's,
We need people to protest. We need people, dater, to tell all the dating app they're on, like, to use Clara.
Yeah, no, yes. I think they need this information. I think that's where they completely messed up on this last campaign, is because they weren't hearing and they weren't seeing the data. And it's crazy to me that they don't want this data that's occurring after the match, right? Mm-hmm. The post-match dating journey is the holistic picture of the dater. And the only view that they're looking at when they're seeing their user is what they experienced online. But again, we already differentiated that a user is not a dater, and you need to look at the whole person. And there are so many users who are yearning to become a dater, but they're getting stuck in this loop online that they never get to be a dater. And that's where the dating apps and the Clara for Daters need to work together and try to figure out, how do we convert more users to become daters and really get a meaningful social connection out of it.
So normally I ask all the guests what advice you would give to the younger self. So with you, I'm going to ask a different question.
Okay.
You know, since you're doing all the research and having Clara, what would you give a love advice to the younger self?
I mean, if I had Clara, I would first use it. Jillian, I would say, Jillian, like when I was dating my ex in the early stages, make sure to be honest with yourself and use it. And that would be the big thing, is like reflecting and be honest with yourself. Because that's the reality, Evie. I look back on my relationship with my ex, and I didn't know that he was cheating on me the whole time. I didn't discover that until later. But there were instances early on in dating that I overlooked because I was thinking, well, that's part of a relationship. Like I'm uncomfortable with it, but it's something that I'll just overlook. And I only focused on the positive things. I actually was journaling during this time that I was dating him, and I only wrote down the positive things. I never wrote down the negative things. Oh. And I know there was only one entry out of the whole time period that I was with him where I actually drew a picture. And it was a picture of me by myself on the island and then him on another island. And that was the only negative thing that I ever said, which is completely false and delusional, because there were so many instances that I felt uncomfortable. Like there was times when he was asking me things that I was uncomfortable about. There was things that he would do things that I was uncomfortable with. There was behaviors that I should have called out more, and I didn't. And that's the advice. Like, pay attention. Be honest with yourself and be authentically you. Like, that we get on this best behavior kind of kick where we're always on our best behavior when we're meeting someone new. And the reality is, don't stop pleasing people. I always use my sister and my best friend as the examples, because they're the most honest people I know, and they're both in healthy, committed relationships because they were honest right away. When the guy did something that they didn't like, hey, that was messed up. I didn't like that. And if the guy adjusted behavior, then that was a green flag. If he was defensive and said, no, you're crazy, red flag, right? Mm-hmm. That's really easy. But you have to give them the opportunity to act, and you have to be honest and communicate out loud.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, that would be the advice and she would give to her younger self.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming today. Yeah. And our podcast, this episode, I think is so informative for all the women out there, especially for me. I feel like I got this really expensive dating coaches now all episode for free. Love you.
Yeah,
you're like awesome. I love you. I'm so happy for you. I can see from the beginning and how you bring to Clara now, and it's so helpful. So I hope those major dating apps would definitely should have a tool work with Clara.
Yes, that's the goal. My hope is we can start working together in the next couple months.
And people download Clara. I mean, I'm downloading it because we actually use it in our form. So we use Clara as a way to keep track of dating. So thank you so much.
Yeah, no, I love spending time with you always, and being able to be on your podcast has been amazing. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Yeah.